Morning.
Okay, Mr. Mathis, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm here.
Good morning, Mr.
Good
Mathis.
morning. Good morning. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm here. Hello? Hello? I can't hear you.
Good morning, Mr. Mathis.
Good, good morning.
Can you
You're clipping a bit, but I can hear you. I can't hear you at all right now.
about now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Testing. Can you hear me? Oh, you're muted, Ronald. Now you're
Muted.
not muted. I can hear you. I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
We're gonna jump.
Hello? Turn my volume up some. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I'm muted, and it. Yeah, now. Okay. Uh, yes, sir. So we're gonna go ahead and get first. There are ways of. Uh, yes, yes, sir. Okay. Can you hear me clearly? Yes,
I
sir.
can now.
Are we still having problems with you hearing me?
No, I hear you.
Test options. Okay. Good morning, Mr. Mathis. Welcome to the platform of Solar Now. And I'm your host, Ronald Bethay. And you know, if you join us on a regular basis, yes, once again, okay, yeah, once again, yes, sir. Once again, economic impact on, oh, yes, yes, sir. We seem to have a little delay. Yes, sir. We have a delay in the in our on the platform here. Yes, sir. Uh, Yes, sir. I know. I'm looking. I'm looking. I'm looking right after you, Miss Mathis. I can hear into our show this morning. Uh, First, I want to thank you for. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Mathis. Okay. Let me let me see what's going on here again in in our platform here. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Miss. Let's try to take this from the top again. I seem to be having a few technical problems. Uh, welcome once again to the platform of Solar Now. To the platform of Solar Now and the future with its economic impact on Black America. I want to thank you for taking time from your very busy schedule to be a guest on the show today. And Mr. Mathis, I've had an opportunity to sort of go up on your website and look at the outstanding work that you're doing there with your firm. I'm trying to make sure I've got the correct pronunciation. Is that NASA Energy
It's actually
on
NSAI.
the name of your firm? And
Yeah.
as I went to your website, I saw, yeah, okay, yes. And as I went to the website, I was able to read that you had a slogan about forgotten who have been left out of this new green economy. And I want to thank you for the work that you and your beautiful wife have been doing over the past several years in terms of looking at the manufacturing aspect of this industry, because you are the only African American owned solar installation manufacturer I know to be on the what we call this planet called Earth. And with that being said, sir, I'm looking at, and I've been tracking the industry as it relates to the, the tax credits they have been uh, uh, under this HR1 bill here in Washington, D.C. And your input from how do you feel about this, this cancellation or rescinding of the at 45X and 45 and impact uh, your company and the plans to build solar manufacturers, planning to build a solar manufacturing facility in Kentucky, as I understand. So, with that being said, could you sort of share some of your background and what brought you into the manufacturing realm for in the solar industry?
Yeah. So I have to apologize. I heard about half of it. We're having some clipping, but I think I know the question that you asked, and I'll try to provide the answer. So um, I have been working in the utility vertical for over 30 years. And back in 2012, one of my utilities, corporate utilities, actually, it was the third largest utility in the country, asked me if I would go and get my FERC authorization as a power marketer. Here in California, there's a General Order 156 that requires that all products that are bought, a certain percentage, have to be procured through a certified diverse business enterprise. And we happen to be a DBE and have been with the California Public Utilities Commission for many, many, many years. And so they needed some help in their core competency, which was electricity. And we had been providing them technology. We had a technology firm before we got into the renewable energy business. And um, that's what sparked us moving into renewable energy. We wound up being, as I understand, the first African American and woman owned firm to get a FERC authorization in electricity in 130 years, um, which started us in our journey. Subsequent to that, we were able to negotiate the exclusive distributorship for the only African American owned solar panel manufacturer of scale in the world out of Morocco. And as we started to move forward and the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, we realized that domestic manufacturing was vital. to being able to take advantage of all of the tax credits, especially the manufacturing tax credits, the 45X as you talked about. And so that's what made our journey, moved us in that direction. Um, I'm originally a native of Kentucky, Western Kentucky, a place called Paducah, Kentucky. And so when we look to determine domestic manufacturing, oh, which I must say, their manufacturing facilities currently in Al Hasima, which is in Morocco, and a brand new 1 gigawatt line in Tangier. And we thought, okay, domestic manufacturing, take advantage of these tax credits, which would, you know, help augment our ability to manufacture and take advantage of that domestic 45X tax credit. So I thought, as you said, our more than a motto, our existence, our being is that we bring the promise of the green economy and green jobs to forgotten people and forgotten places. I grew up in a town full of forgotten people in a forgotten place. And so my first instinct was, let's go back home and help the people who helped me. And so that's why we were looking to move a manufacturing and build a manufacturing facility in Kentucky. In the meantime, we were awarded technical assistance through the Department of Energy NREL, which helped us put together our whole manufacturing plan for domestic manufacturing, um, and laid everything out. And so we're moving down in that direction. We were. Um, Unfortunately, this reversal, backing out of the 45X as a result of the new bill, as you just articulated, it's put a chilling effect on domestic manufacturing of renewable energy projects and manufacturing products. It's almost as though there's been a gauntlet laid down, a war against renewable energy. And I don't understand why. And as I speak to other manufacturers, other companies, even foreign companies who've invested in domestic manufacturing plants, they can't figure it out either. Um, because
Well,
solar
Keith,
has been the
I don't want
fastest
going
job
into
producer in the country.
in the U.S. But see, I don't want to stop you right now because you're sharing with our listening audience some very, very, very vital information on your background and how you came to where you are. And I guess we have a lot in common because I hail from South Carolina, from one of those small towns. We refer to them as two shoe towns. Nobody had shoes but the white man and the mule. So, with that being said, I understand and I can relate to that. What has been so troubling to me, I've been in this space since 2015. I actually was in the transportation industry. I had a small limo company here in Washington, D.C., and several taxi cabs that I rented out I had on the street. And I went to a city council meeting and I saw the first app back in 2011. And I worked very, very closely with a very dear friend who was an attorney here for the cab industry. And he basically told me by year 2018, because of the technology, that the taxi cab industry as we know it would no longer exist. And that has come to pass
Mm-hmm.
because of the app. I made that very, very clear to the fleet owners because a large portion of our fleet owners here in Washington, D.C., at that time, we had approximately about 76 different cab companies in the city, and about half of them were owned by guys who I knew for years who had went to Howard University and got engineering degrees and things of that nature. And they just sort of got sort of fed up with the system, and they opened up their own businesses. And I told them, I said, technology is going to make this industry obsolete as we know it. And as I saw the first generation of the app, which was two young white guys who had flown over from England, and they had on their phone this app and showed you basically how it operated. The customer could, in fact, uh, uh, text in the request for the vehicle and they could come and pick you up. And the guy was just getting off the ground. And he said something. He said, he said, you have a failing system here. And we didn't. We had the best system in the world because it was an independent owner operator system. That means anyone could get into the industry, whether you were returning citizens or whatever, you could come out, get your license, get your own vehicle, and get on and go straight into business and work. And we were making very, very good money at that time. And I'm talking about back uh, in the early 2000s, and because I spent 44 years in the transportation industry before I came over to the renewable industry. But fast forward, the reason why I'm bringing this up, I'm looking at the fact that solar is not new. Matter of fact, Jimmy Carter had put solar panels on the White House, and Ronald Reagan took them down. I've looked at the fact that Obama's administration with the Sunshot Identity Initiative came about because of the disaster with Katrina that hit New Orleans, and how embarrassed the Bush administration got. And they had to do something at that time. And a young man from the West Coast, he started an organization called Green for All. I'm trying to think of his name right now. He was in Obama's administration, but he authored the Green Jobs Act. And when he wrote that, Van Jones, and as Van authored that act, he was pushed out. And the 2008 elections came in, and everything else is history. But what I saw missing was African Americans in this space. I did my research, decided that I would go into the policy and advocacy side as it relates to the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative, because our mission is we advocate for African and African American owned renewable energy companies, not just solar installation and design firms. So we look at the need for our environmental engineering firms, the EV charging industry. And since that time, we've been able to build a national collaboration, working with a very, very dear friend of mine. His name is Fred Aladende, who heads an organization called the Foundation for Democracy in Africa. Another person who I befriended, who I did not know had passed, was a brother by the name of Mr. Jerome Ringo, who started a firm called Zotec. He was an engineer as well as an international attorney, and he developed a floating, what we would call actually, we have them on our light posts. They're like big transformers. These transformers. So when the water table on the water levels on rivers would get to certain levels in the African nations, which I know you're aware, you have blackouts. So those turbines would kick in, and that would bring the load back up. and he just passed in April. And I reached out to him a couple of weeks ago because I'm reconstructing my list of African and African American owned renewable energy firms because we are preparing for an initiative. But it, but but uh, uh, for whatever the reason, the I, I I I guess AI decides it wants to take over, but I'm going to continue with my conversation. But Keith, in looking at the re, 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 revisions that have taken place in this platform as as to this because I had to close one window. Trying to make sure that you're able to hear me. Uh, but what has taken place as we begin to look at this revisions and the cancellations of the investment tax credits? There were approximately 132,877,000,000 dollars of private investment dollars that came from various companies. And I referred you to that article on my website, which you were able to see that South Korea and Japan were the leading firms, and it gave a breakdown of the various uh, companies. It didn't name those companies, but in saying that, this is things that is concerning, very concerning to me, is that out of 397 renewable energy projects, only 124 of those projects were put in blue districts. The other
That's right.
projects all went to red districts. And that is what I feel that President Biden's strategy was to put those projects into those red districts, knowing that he had more than a brilliant, a comparable, capable vice president, but knowing how racism plays and raises its ugly head when it comes to politics in this country. Because I've been around Washington 50 years, and I've had opportunities to uh, uh, have contracts through a very, very close friend of mine who had the contract with Raytheon, American Airlines, and we in fact were able to listen into conversations that would never be heard by a person of African descent. We're talking about the decisions that are made every day as we talk about the defense industry. But looking at the solar and renewable energy industry, why has it been such a problem with them messaging and the Democratic Party getting the message out about the loss of this investment and the loss of these very, very valuable, very most investment that has ever taken place? The Inflation Reduction Act was, with the Build Back Better agenda of the Biden Harris administration, is the largest investment in infrastructure in the history of the United States of America. And we're talking about 880,000 jobs are on the line. Yes, recently I looked at an article that said in May alone, $1.4 billion were on projects were basically put on hold based on things that you just stipulated in your conversation, Keith, about
Yes.
how companies are very, very hesitant about continuing to invest in this country when there's such a attack on the wind and solar industry, which have been the leading components of putting electrons on the grid. From 2023 to 2024, there was a 33% increase with solar. Solar puts 60% of all new electrons onto the grid in this country. And with the proliferation of data centers, I just recently, there was a seminar held over in Dubai, and Bloomberg hosted this seminar, and they had investors from all over the world. And their goal is to build 8,000 data centers worldwide. And when we began to look at one data center can use, and I'm talking about not a large mega data center, one data center can use enough energy to power 100,000 homes. And we're looking at how things are playing out in Southwest Memphis in Representative, very dynamic young brother Harris's district, how Elon Musk, they built a data center there 5 years ago, about 6 years ago now, and they indicated on their permit that they were going to use 15 gas turbines to power that data center. When someone finally went out and checked, they found out they had 35 gas turbines. And this stuff is spewing all kinds of lead, arsenics, carcinogens into the air, polluting the air, devaluating the property values of homes, and causing asthma with our young people and health problems. But it seems that the right wing mega group could care less about their own constituents. But when you begin to look at the hard economic numbers of investment, it seems as though they don't care of whether these opportunities reach their constituents. So, with that being said, what would be your recommendation? Because I called the Solar Industry Trade Association this morning before we came on the air to talk with their engagement director there, a young brother who I got his email. He was running into a meeting, and that's basically been my problem with trying to work with SEIA over the years. They're so busy with what they're doing, they don't understand what is actually happening with boots on the ground and in the communities. Because in the solar industry, in its side of itself, there's so much fraud going on with solar installation and design firms. And because we've been doing this platform since this particular show since 2016 through our podcast, before we started this digital YouTube channel, we've been able to get all types, thousands of inquiries and emails from people who listen to this platform about the issues that they're having with solar installation and design firms. So from that standpoint, that needs to be looked at and regulated. But on the other side of the industry, nobody's talking about the fact that the fossil fuel industry in 2024 received $640 billion in tax credits and $52 billion in subsidies. How can this be so one-sided? And when we're looking at natural gas being chosen as the fossil fuel to power these data centers, which is creating havoc across the nation.
Good, great questions, great insight. And it's something that we look at daily because we're right on the ground here and we know exactly what's going on, not only from a development standpoint where we actually have projects going through the interconnection process currently. I'll just give you a perfect example. We've got a project out here in Southern California that's going through the interconnection process. And in 2023, FERC passed some rules that required changes. The idea was to stop the slow to no process for interconnection for developers, because that's kind of how utilities have traditionally acted. And so as a result of that, they put together what they call cluster studies. As a result of the bill that was just passed, in our cluster that we're going through currently, every one of the projects fell out except ours. We're the only one left in the cluster. And that's a result of the onerous changes in the tax credit process. Now, you brought up a valid point about fossil fuel tax credits. This is nothing new. The fossil fuel industry has been receiving tax credits for decades with no understanding or issue with the amount of profit that's been made by the fossil fuel industry. It's so profitable, but yet and still they get tax credits. Well, one of the reasons why they're so profitable is that they get the tax credits, right? And so what's been happening is renewable energy has been challenging their position. Coal has been bypassed because it's too expensive to utilize coal as a fuel to generate electricity. Solar has passed it, wind has passed it. For the first time, because of the Inflation Reduction Act, the people, the companies who are able to benefit from these tax credits have changed. It's been spread so that it's open to folks that look like us, farmers, people who haven't before been able to utilize the benefit of generating revenue in their area, in their community. And so that was the benefit of the Inflation Reduction Act. And just as you said correctly, it's created unbelievable growth in infrastructure for the very first time. And solar in particular are putting electrons on to the grid faster than anything. So the job growth, the the electrons being placed on the grid faster than anything, the jobs, and by the way, just to take a step back, you talked about the Democrats not being able to produce the message. I believe that the design to put manufacturing of renewable energy products in red states was a strategy designed to keep the Inflation Reduction Act from being repealed. Because once you typically get jobs, and as you pointed out to me from the website, the information that you shared, Georgia is producing the greatest amount of renewable energy manufacturing jobs in the country. Georgia, a red state. And by the way, that particular manufacturer is in
Q-Cell.
exactly Q-Cell in a bloody red district,
No
right?
question. It's in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, Dalton, Georgia. Now I want to
That's exactly right.
back up a second and sort of share this with our listening audience, because people can relate to things that affect them when you're talking about the gas, water, and electric bill. Now, you touched upon something about the regulatory entities that control, and the country is cut up in pie. You have about, I got the list here, looking at the different uh, entities that control the regulatory in, of the energy in the country. It's divided up. Now, when we talk about the PJM controls 13 states, starting with North Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, the District of Columbia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Illinois. But the PJM is the oldest and the largest. It has 65 million customers. Inside of the PJM, the membership is comprised of 1,000 members, basically all fossil fuel interest and stock stakeholders. Inside of the PJM, you have over 3,000 green projects, solar and wind and battery storage projects that have been in this queue for 5 years that could not get permitted to come online.
Right.
This has created an unnecessary and highest wholesale capacity auctions in the history of this country on the cost of energy. The PJM in 2022-2023 for a megawatt day, the annual wholesale capacity cost was $34.13. At the end of, because we know that this auction takes place in July. Well, we know in 2024 that the elections were campaign for president was going rapid. I refer to the guy as COVID 45 plus 2 with 34 felony counts coming straight at you. Everybody knows him as their President Trump. He called a meeting as the candidate with the fossil fuel industry and told them to put up $1 billion and they could do whatever they wanted to do. Well, this is reflective in the rate hike of 686% in the wholesale auction that for 2024 jumped from $34.13 to $269.92 for a megawatt day. In 2023, that cost for over those 13 states in the District of Columbia was $2.2 billion of costs, which is passed directly on to the consumers, us, the ratepayers. In 2024, after that 686% rate hike, it jumped to $14.7 billion, which was passed on us as consumers. In 2025, because Governor Shapiro filed a lawsuit with the Federal Regulatory Commission in February of 2023, he blocked with Governor Westmore and several other governors who joined into that lawsuit with the Office of the Public Service Commission's General Counsel. That lawsuit blocked an 800% increase. It was a $21 billion rate hike, but it was around natural gas, and it was all relative to the building of data centers because of artificial intelligence, crypto mining, and blockchain technology. Yes. Now, we don't have any problem with those technologies. What we're saying is none of the fossil fuels can compete with solar and wind, even without the tax credits. So it does not even make economic sense to undercut the solar and wind industry by repealing the investment tax credits, which were not set to sunset until 2034. So this is what's so disturbing to me. My senator, Van Hollen, and also Brooks is my senator, also Brooks, the congressman, Glenn Ivey. I've been in contact with their offices. I've been trying to get a meeting with them to say, look, y'all have to start messaging to the public how the impact of this new, what they call technologies, AI, crypto mining, with blockchain technology, if they're going to choose to go with natural gas to power these gas turbines. There is a 5-year backlog for orders on these gas turbines, so they cannot come online fast enough to meet the demand. But you got over 3,000 projects for wind and solar in the queue that's already built. They just can't get permitted. Right. So this is why I'm so passionate about this thing, Keith. I think that this we are on the, with people being squeezed. They have gutted EPA in terms of the employees. They are laying people off in key positions I just looked at the fact that the research and development arm of EPA that does the research on the impact of when you build these data centers and put these power gas turbine plants near communities of color, which is basically our black and brown communities, the impacts that they're having on our young and our old, and the devaluation of property values. This is an economic issue also. So when we begin to look at this thing in a 365-degree circumference and look at the big picture, it does not make logical sense that the only thing that is coming out of our congressional representatives on the Democrat side, and believe me, I live in Tacoma Park, Maryland. All of my neighbors and 90% of my community is Hispanic. I have no problem with the Hispanic communities. And 90% of my closest friends, they're from the Caribbean, they're from Africa, they're from all over the world. So I don't have a problem with folks coming here to make a better life for themselves and their children's. But what I do have a problem with is the fact that you're leaving out this messaging around the impact of the fossil fuel industry and the data centers that are being built. They're building one in Frederick, Maryland. They get one to put one right here in Greenbelt. These things are going to cost me directly on my gas and electricity bill, and I've already seen the increase. So when you're not talking to me and are not talking about these issues, you're talking about a pocketbook issue. Even if you have a home you can't live in, if you can't pay your damn utility bill, then you take and gut the staffing for the Assisted Energy Program nationwide. They got $6 billion there with nobody to get the money out the door. So I'm here in Washington, so I see this playing out in real time because I've got friends who have relatives that are working inside these agencies, and we talk to each other.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say that because there's outside of the financial issue, which you're absolutely correct about, the ability to get rid of Medicaid and potentially Medicare, all of the all of the dangerous health issues surrounded by putting natural gas turbine data center, power in communities that you're describing. All of a sudden, there's no way to track the health related outcomes as a result of that, too, because that's all being gutted.
Yeah, that's the research and development arm at EPA with the scientists,
Correct.
and they just they're gutting it. And
That's right.
I have a YouTube video on my website. My listeners audience, they can go to positivechangepc.com, click on news and events, and this information I do. This is what I do every day. And I'm not being compensated for it, but I'm doing it because I know it needs to be, the data needs to be somewhere so we can go to that data when it's time to defend the African and African American renewable energy companies in this arena, because we did not even get a fair shot when this was set up, because most of these companies came out of the Obama administration. I know Grid Alternatives and a lot of these national organizations, these people work on the Hill. They saw what was coming down the pike and they positioned themselves. So when Obama's administration came in and Obama was able to stay in for 2 terms, and this is why our people have to understand how important it is to vote. It normally takes an administration, when they come into power, Biden on his first day signed Executive Order 14006, 1400 not 8 and 13985. That created the Justice 40 Initiative.
Yep.
It Invest in America agenda to deal with climate change domestically in the U.S. and abroad, and for environmental justice
That's right.
initiatives. Those executive orders were the first thing he did. They bought in $1.7 trillion. That is the investment. People can go to our website and go to the one that talks about tracking the investment on our website under news and events. E2 puts it out. They do an excellent job at keeping that data. They provide you with a state by state breakdown on how many jobs were going to be created, how much money was going to be invested, and what state it was in. It was 40, I think it was 48 states on
48.
that chart.
That's right. You
Then
shared it with me.
Then it breaks down by the industry sector, whether it was battery storage, wind, hydronetics, nuclear, whatever. Then it breaks it down by the congressional districts. And
Right.
that's what's mind blowing. When you look at the fact, $132 billion, 100 is going into red districts. Only
That's right.
20 billion, 83 million is going into blue districts. And that is one of the reasons why I felt like the Democrats were slow or did not want to talk about this thing, because Biden put the lion's share of this help where it needed to go the most, into the small red poor districts in the deep South.
That's right. 245 of the projects were in red districts. 245, just as you said. And 129 in blue districts. And as you said, $109 billion in red districts, $20 billion in blue districts. So the idea, I suppose, he was thinking that he would go to the forgotten people in forgotten places. But even though that is the case with this repeal, all of that is being backed out, because I'm working around the developers that were developing the projects. I'm with them. I'm a member of the uh, American Council on Renewable Energy Accelerate group. I graduated from it. And so I understand exactly what's going on, because I'm going nose to nose and working closely with other developers for projects, developers that look like us, um, for other projects, and developers that don't look like us, and they're all doing the same thing. It's like, what is going on here? Why in the world would the would the Congress, whose constituents are benefiting the most, rip the sidewalk out from under them? You know, why would you risk all these jobs for the people who voted you in? It's as if you don't care. And I always sum it up to a term that I learned living down here in Southern California near the border. There's a term that's in Spanish, that they utilize in Mexico, and it's called mordita. And that's exactly how you explained it. Give me $1 billion and you can do whatever you want to do.
Well, Keith, I've been on this mission of getting the word out around these issues. That is why I was so glad when you finally agreed to come on to the show, even though we had a few technical problems to get started today, uh, because I had the privilege of meeting you at the Department of Energy here in Washington at one of the summits that they were having. And at that time, they had a Hispanic summit, energy summit. I watched the Secretary of Energy, her interaction with us as African Americans, who she basically came on the stage, said a few words, and walked out the room. She stayed in that Hispanic summit the whole period when they held their summit. Now, I look at the politics because I understand politics determine who gets what, how much of what, when, and why. So we cannot sit here and play these games as though politics does not impact what is going on, because
That's right.
it impacts everything. And I tried to share that with Shalea Marset, who was the right hand of Shalonda Baker, working with a very close friend of mine here, Antoine Thompson. Antoine is a very dynamic young brother. He heads the Greater Washington Clean Cities Collaboration Group. They're in 72 cities across the country, and they work on EV charging infrastructure, for buses, vans, the whole 9 yards. But he works specifically targeting, trying to make sure that the African American and communities of color get their share of funding for electric buses and things of that nature. Antoine and I was having a conversation about 2 years ago, and he put it in my mind. He said, Ron, if we cannot get the folks over DOE to listen to us, he said, I got some contacts inside of the White House, because he's a former state representative from New York. He served in the Senate of New York before he took this position and moved down here.
Okay.
And this brother's done a mammoth job, but we were working trying to get the EJE offices codified before the Trump administration came in, and we begged them to sit down with us, because we said, if we can get your office codified, y'all are the ones who have taken the policy, drafted the programs, put those into RFPs, but they were still struggling on how they were going to get the money out the door. Well, Michael Regan, who is a North Carolina A&T alumnus, and I happen to know Mike, and I understood what they were doing. They had a meeting at Coppin State University in Baltimore. Vice President Kamala Harris was there with CDFIs, because they were trying to figure out, how do we get this money out the door? So what Mike Snow's strategy was, they put, through the Greenhouse Gas Initiative, they put $20 billion under City Bank, which is something that's been done before, because those entities had already applied for those grants. They had been vetted by the government, but they knew that money would not be ready because it had to go through the appropriations process. At the same time, a pilot program, which was started right here in Washington, D.C., that I worked tirelessly on, and we never got any compensation. It was called a Solar for All program.
Oh, I know.
$7 billion in that program. That pilot started right here in Washington, D.C. I was working with a group called Neighborhoods United, who started in this town. It started off in D.C. Sun. Her name is Miss Anna Schoolman. She's been on this show, my show, several times in the past. And I tried to share with her. I said, look, nobody's spending any money with Black-owned media. I said, if we don't get some money to go to Black-owned media and buy a spot to give me an opportunity to get on the airways with I know Dr. Kathy Hughes. I know her personally, been knowing her since she started WHUR radio at Howard University. I've been knowing Kathy and do it for years. And I said, look, I can't go to Kathy without no money. It's a business. I said, but if y'all will help me get a small grant. So I applied for a $25,000 grant. I didn't get it. And I told Miss Schoolman, I said, Anna, y'all can stand at all the bus stops you want and pass out flyers. You can have all the meetings at the libraries and the public schools that you want in the evenings when people get in. But you're not going to get the numbers that you need because people in Washington, D.C. has heard every kind of hustle and game that's come down the road. I said, now, if you don't have someone that they feel comfortable with and they're listening to, and I've been out here for years advocating for the community in the taxi cab industry as well inside of this industry. I said, I know that what I can do is make a difference. No one wanted to help me get the money, so no problem. Well, she was getting $1 million a year just to hold these meetings inside of 8 wards. And her thing was they formed a co-op inside your block and showed the people who joined the co-op how to select a solar installation, design firms, the difference in the different types of quality of different solar panels. Some are much more efficient than others, right, and how to go about the process of coming together to form a co-op so they can buy as a group rather than as an individual. That was their business model. Great model. Have no problem with it today. Support what they're doing. They're now in 12 states, 25 cities, but she's Jewish. And I tell people, I said, look, let me tell you something. If you don't think race got something to do with it, I can sell you some real estate on the 14th Street Bridge and you can buy it during rush hour. I said, this is absolutely insane. That program was started by Darryl Green, NFL Hall of Famer, Mark Davis with WDC Solar, who's one of the founding members of the National Association of Blacks in Solar, who got me to serve as the first president of NABS. Now we've elected another young 37-year-old brother who we're trying to bring him into the fold with understanding the entire picture of what we need to do. And this brother who serves now on the DC Public, Mr. Todd, I'll think of Todd's name in a second, but he is on the Public Service Commission. They started the Solar for All program in the district. They had no money for rooftop repair or anything. You know how things have to evolve. But the long and short of this thing is Tommy Wells hired a film crew and they went out and did a documentary. Rather than putting any money in Black-owned media, they did a little advertising here, just a little, because I raised so much sand that with call-in shows and people would have me on their shows, that they started spending a little money with WL. But what I'm saying, Keith, is I see an urgent need for us to come together to see how we can put together a messaging plan around the things that we're discussing right now. It makes no sense to me that $132 billion is going to be pulled out of the U.S. economy. And I have an article online that says the Inflation Reduction Act has provided a 4-to-1 return.
Yep.
In terms of every dollar invested. And the sad part about this is not taxpayers' dollars. The only thing that the government gave them was the tax incentives so they would be able to invest and get a return on their investment.
That's right.
And that's not clear to people. I've been on Carl Nelson's show 100 times. Carl said, well, that's the taxpayers' dollars. I said, Carl, that's not taxpayers' dollars. That's an investment tax credit that gives the corporation the incentive to come in to invest $3 billion, which QCell has already done. Now, what happens if we don't? We hand everything right back over to China.
That's right. That's exactly right. Um, and they know it. And the difference is that they play the long game, we play the short game. And so they think, and history has proven that they can stay in the game longer while all of this is going on, and at the same time they gain market share because they play long. And unfortunately, it seems that we don't understand who we're playing against. I was a college athlete just like you were, and the one thing I knew is you never underestimate your opponent. That's
On it.
number one.
That's
And the
right.
second thing is you're always prepared to play the game all day. It's like that old saying we used to have in the neighborhood: you better pack a sack lunch because we're going to be here all day.
Oh, no question. Just like my high school coach used to tell me, set up under the tree with some ice water. So you run till I get tired. You know what I'm saying? But Keith, we're at the close of this show, and we had a little difficulty getting started. I'm going to have you back on. But could you give some closing comments on what is the actual impact? Or do you think that the public understands the impact of what has just taken place within the Biden administration in those short 4 years? I don't think they understand.
They do not understand. They do not understand the impact, but they're going to understand here real soon. And the reality of it is that you cannot walk through this life in this country with your eyes closed and taking whatever someone tells you to be gospel. You've got to invest the time to find out what's really going on. And we have to be messengers to deliver that message. As you have astutely said, that we have to send the message out to the people so that the proper perspective is garnered. Because the way the game is played politically in the United States is we don't have to tell them what the real story is. We'll just tell them what the story is, and they'll believe it because they won't invest the time to find out if what we're telling them is true or not. And so, for people like us and my company and our company that believe in bringing the promise of the green economy and green jobs to forgotten people in forgotten places, is that we have to be the messengers all day, every day. And we're not just doing it in words, we're doing it in deeds. We're providing the opportunities to make sure that these things happen in communities that require, that need economic justice, whether the government provides it or not. We know the real story, and we have the tools to bring that to them on a daily basis. And that's what we're going to do.
Well, Keith, I am blessed to have the opportunity to have been at the Department of Energy to meet you and your lovely wife, and the hard work that y'all put in and the sacrifice that you put in. Because, like I said, I get a lot of information every day, and I sort of look at everybody's agenda, and what's been so disturbing to me is that if you take all the solar installation and design firms that are African and African American owned and run in the United States of America, you put them all together, out over 13,000 firms, you got less than 100 companies altogether. And that, it doesn't make any difference if they're software developers or engineering design companies, or whatever they're doing. You put them all together. We have less than 100 African and African American owned firms. That cannot, that can't, that can't be, because
Agreed.
this is where all of the growth and opportunities are in this new green economy. And it's not going to go away because there's something called climate change. And regardless of how blind people want to play this game about the mega agenda, and they don't want to believe in the science, well, they believe in them floods when they just killed over 200 people in Texas.
Yes,
These people gone away from here. We're talking about children.
that's right.
And they didn't even put in an alarm system, an alert system on that river, because they have that system. That river has had a history of flooding. And when we begin to look at this data of Word in Black, there are several young Black climate reporters, and they did an interesting article talking about Black folk and people of color die at a 3-to-1 ratio when these natural disasters hit, because of where our housing tracts are located. Most of the properties that are sold to us were sold to us in flood district zones.
That's right.
And that's nationwide. I don't care where you go.
That's true.
And this is systemic racism. We know it. And I intend to fight it until the Creator takes me off the planet. So with that being said, I want to thank you, Mr. Keith Mathis, for doing what you are doing, because you could be doing something else with your time. But you took the time to come on this platform, Solar Now in the Future, with its economic impact on Black America. And I want my listening audience to understand, we're not the greedy, but we are the needy. So if you want to go to my website and click on that donate button, you can do just that, so I can improve this platform and get me a producer, so I don't have these technical problems when I start out trying to start these shows, so we can get on the air and bring this stuff the way you want to hear it. See, everybody wants everything to be shiny, but you got to work with what you're working with. And with that being said, Keith, you have a beautiful day, and thank you for being a guest on Solar Now in the Future, with its economic impact on Black America.
Well, thank you, Ronald. It's been my pleasure, and my door is open. You have my cell phone, and I say my cell phone's like the Hotel California. I check out, but I never leave. So call me when you need me.
Okay. Okay, brother. Thank you. And you
All
have a
right.
blessed day. All
Thank
right. Bye
you.
bye. All right. Bye bye.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Keith Mathis, and I am the host of Solar Now in the Future, with its economic impact on Black America. And it's been my privilege to be able to speak with the gentleman who has done the work. We're not talking about something that someone might do or getting ready to do. And bruh, I was thinking about that. Now, this gentleman has already built a manufacturing facility in Morocco, and he's working in several African countries. And we intend to continue to work with him, and with the collaboration that we're working on with an African initiative that we have reached out to uh, a number of our partners here. But before I leave the airways today, I want people to understand, you need to go to my website and know whatever you can give is too small. We urgently need to get some funding in here so we can work on improving our website and improving how we deliver this programming to you, our listening audience. Because I am doing it the best way I can, and I don't have a problem with doing that. And with that being said, I want to thank you for taking the time to come into our YouTube channel to listen to this very, very important broadcast today when we're talking about tracking the manufacturing industry as relates to the solar and wind industry and its economic impact that it is having on this country, and how this big brutal steel called HR1, referred to as the bill that was passed by Congress, is going to impact you, and you will see it on your gas, water, and electric bill. With that being said, until next week, we don't want you to meet us here. We want you to beat us here as we close another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with